Hello friends, it's Chrissy. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I am doing a VR to Marlena with her Tarot Extremes, Tarot to the Extremes tag. So I just want to tell you about my Friday. So I had such a good day. I got a lot of work done this morning for the Muggle job and the magic job. I ran some errands, I put groceries away, and I laid down in bed to watch some Tarot Tube. I would have laid on the couch, but Albus was like smack dab in the middle of it. So I laid down in bed with my iPad, and the first video that popped up on YouTube was this video with that Marlena did. And I was so excited, like my brain was just going off, and I'm like, I need to get up and like write down what my decks would be. And as I got up to do that, I got an alert that my new tripod thingamajig leg that my phone is now on had been delivered. So I was like, forget it. I'm gonna go get it. I'll put it together. And if it's easy to put together, then I'll go ahead and shoot a video. So it was super easy to put together. It was like twisting 3 pieces in together, tightening up a couple of screws. Like so easy to do. So once I get this done, I'll still have some time to really chill out before Nathan gets home from his mom's. He's visiting his mom today. But yeah, this is my VR to Marlena. So she went through 7 different extremes, and I, like, the whole time she was doing this, I was singing Opposites Attract by Paula Abdul, and is that MC Scat Cat, right? I was singing that in my head because it was amazing to me how good some of these opposite pairings worked. So as always, anything I say is solely my opinion. You know, that's what TarotTube is, right? That's what YouTube is. I'm very excited about this tag, so let's just go. So the first comparison, the first opposites, which again, like as a Scorpio and as a firstborn daughter, like I live like polarities are where I'm comfortable. I have issues with like holding into the gray, going into the gray. So this was just like, this polarities was just right on to me. So the first pairing she talked about was Minimalist and Maximalist. Now, there were a lot of different ways that I thought about going with this. My Minimalist deck was like automatic, no contest. And then when I started thinking about my Maximalist, did we make that word up? Like, does that word actually exist? When I started thinking about the Maximalist deck, there were a lot of ways to go with that. Did I want to go with symbolism? Did I want to go with information? And I finally decided to go with this little friend here. So for my Minimalist deck, I have the original Kawaii Tarot. Now I know there's a Kawaii Tarot that just came out, and I don't understand how like you can have 2 decks, that was me checking the time, how you can have 2 decks with the same name at the same time, but it is what it is. This was one of my first decks. It is a, I'll show it this way. It is a pip deck, very much a pip deck, but it is so fun. It is so fun. And it holds this energy of curiosity and play that a lot of tarot decks take too seriously. Like this to me is the like boiling down of minimalism in a tarot deck. It is straight pip. There are very few that I would even call like pips with feeling, to be completely honest. I actually just bought a second copy of this deck today. I had written on some of my original deck when I was looking at doing flashcards, and I decided I missed having it in my collection, you know, in its natural state. So this is my most minimalist deck, and this is the Kawaii Tarot. Now, the deck that I would consider the most maximalist in my collection is the Lillifer Tarot. And here's why. The guidebook, there is a ton, the guidebook just spells out how much symbolism there is in each card. These are not just pretty pictures. This is a lot of information in the card. So the cards talk about the 4 elements with the virtues, the vices, the symbols, the colors, balance and excess in each of the elements. There's the zodiac with the planet, element, gifts, body, herbs, and stones. So the elemental symbols, the planetary symbols, the sacred colors, the sacred numbers, the sacred symbols, the sacred creatures. There's a lot in this deck. And also there is some lack of clarity to me around like which number is which. I always have to look because either the 5s look like 4s or the 6s look like 5s. I can never remember. That's why I have to look. I enjoy this deck. I enjoy this deck a lot, but I feel like the information it gives me is completely on the bordering on overwhelm, like totally maximalist, as Marlena put it. So for example, this is, it has a 4, but this is a symbol that looks like a 4, but this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of wands. Like, and again, symbols, colors, animals. There's just, it's a complex deck. That's the word I'm looking for. So minimalist and complex. I think that's a better word for me, and how I view this deck. Now, is it readable without going into all of the guidebook things? Absolutely. This is Lilith, one of the bonus cards. This is to me, a beautifully intuitive reader. But I recognize that there is a lot in here that I don't know yet and isn't reflective of the type of reader that I am, and I don't really care. I mean, it doesn't bother me to have all of this extra information, but I recognize that this is a complicated deck. I think about like a gazillion years ago when I got my first iPhone, and I remember my dad giving me a hard time because there was so much that it could do, and the only thing I cared about was texting people and taking pretty pictures. And I feel like that is sort of the energy with me and the Lillifer. Like, I just want to read it. I know it has a lot more power in it than what I am able or at this point interested to work with. So yeah, the Kawaii Tarot for Minimalist and the Lillifer Tarot for Maximalist. So the next category that Marlena brought up was day versus night. And I had a really hard time with this one, I'm not gonna lie. Because I thought about day and night that went to maybe like sun and moon, but that went to like, kind of like then went to a different category that we'll see later on. So I chose to look at this from day and night, reflecting morning and evening. So a deck that I would use, that I like to use in the morning, and a deck that I like to use in the evening. And it's funny, like as I pick these up, I'm like, oh, there are so many other categories that I could put these decks in. Like this one could also go in the underrated category so easily. And it's interesting how similar the backs are as well. So for my morning deck, the deck that I think is beautiful to use in the morning is, this is the Linescape Tarot. This deck, this deck is very, very special to me. This deck is is very similar to how I experience offer Reiki, the person that I'm meeting with, their energy shows me pictures, and it's like a movie that comes through, and then I tell them the story of the movie they showed me. And this is kind of what it looks like, with shapes that are, that can sometimes be a little bit vague, but very landscapey, and then like something in particular that stands out in the middle of that. This deck just really speaks to me. This is the original edition of this deck. I do have the second generation as well. It was a gift from my friend Amy. But to me, this is the morning, this tells a very hopeful story, right? There are also seasonal cards in this deck. But this deck is, it wakes me up. Oh, and here's a bonus card. I will focus. I just love this card so much. This deck to me tells a story that gets us motivated for the day, right? It tells a story of where we could go during the day, what we could accomplish, where we could focus, what could happen during the day. And I think that's why this deck spoke to me as a morning or a daytime deck, as I find a card that I particularly like to sit on the top as I talk about the other deck. I love this, this Eight of Cups. So my morning deck is the Lionscape Tarot. Now on the opposite side of that, my deck for evening, so we think about this being the deck that I go to when I get out of bed, seeing the the Tarot of Mystical Moments as a deck to go to when I am going to bed, a deck for the evening, a deck that can inspire my dreams in the way that the Lionscape inspired the day. I think the Mystical Moments can inspire dreams, can give me energy and imagery for the magical, for the what I don't need to understand or explain, letting the oddities be what they are, drifting off peacefully into this place of sleep with this sense of adventure and groundedness, going to unknown places, seeing unknown things, meeting unknown people and unknown creatures in our dreams. So that is how I consider this half of this Tarot Opposites prompt. And we're gonna let Justice sit on the top. No, we're gonna let the Ten of Pentacles sit on the top. This is one of my favorite cards ever, because this is what I think my husband's gonna look like when he gets old. Okay, Chrissy, let's focus. So in response to the second category of tarot extremes, we have day and night, which I am seeing as morning and evening, with the Lionscape Tarot and the Tarot for Mystical Moments. I could look at that Ten of Pentacles all day. I realize I could also just like not put these decks back in the bag, but y'all, you don't know how sloppy and careless I can be. And these decks would literally like be all over my office, and I would be running over them with my chair, and then Herschel would jump up here. Albus doesn't jump up on the desk because he's a big boy. But yeah, there would just be a lot of mess involved if I didn't clean up as I go along. So the next category in comparisons is the best shuffle and the worst shuffle. And you can already tell that because this is a worst shuffle, I don't use it because it's in a box. Like that is very, very clear. And you may also notice that the wrap of this bag matches my reading cloth, which is which means this is my deck. This is the Narrative Alchemy Tarot. So the best shuffle is the Narrative Alchemy, and the worst shuffle is the Star Child Tarot. I am not sure which edition this is. I can't get rid of it because it's beautiful, but it's not shuffleable. So my deck, the deck that I created, this is the Narrative Alchemy Tarot. It is currently out of print, but I'm planning on doing a second print in the fall. This is the Shuffled Ink 310 GSM with the linen finish. This is the same cardstock as the Future Ancestors Tarot, which was Marlena's pick for best shuffle, which you'll see later on in my collection. But I included this here because when I'd been playing around with making a deck of my own for a while, for probably a good 6 months. And I knew what I wanted it to be, but then it just seemed so difficult to figure out projection and like who I would go with. And cardstock, shuffle is so important to me. So when I got the Future Ancestors Tarot, I was like, oh, whenever I make my deck, that's going to be my cardstock. So that kind of got me thinking about, okay, maybe I'll make a deck. And then at some point, it seems like, I'm sure it was a couple of weeks, but it felt like just a few days after that, in my Instagram ads, I had an ad for Shuffled Ink, and it was the Future Ancestors Tarot. So I emailed them, and I'm like, do you still carry that cardstock? And they said yes, and I had a deck created in like maybe 3 weeks from the time I decided to make a deck because I'd done so much research that I knew exactly what I wanted it to look like. It was just doing it. So once I crossed that last hurdle, once I had that last piece of information with cardstock, there was nothing holding me back. I guess I could tell you about it, right? Instead of keeping shuffling. The Narrative Alchemy Tarot is, I've chipped that one, is a deck, of course, of 78 cards. Each card has a keyword. The color of the card represents the chakra for the card. And then the tarot correspondence is down in the bottom corner with the number and the element, or if it's a major with the Roman numeral. This is like, I don't have children. I want to acknowledge that. And I don't take it lightly, you know, when people say my heart is round outside of my body, but that is how this feels. This is how I understand tarot, point blank. This is what tarot looks like to me. This is how I feel it. And seeing other people use my deck is just, I don't know how to talk about it. But I love this deck, and I don't know that I would have gone through the process of finalizing it if there wasn't a clear solution that I saw on an Instagram ad to how to get the exact cardstock that I wanted. I'm going to move this out of the way because this is going to get ugly. The worst shuffle. This is, oh, actually, I see it now. This is the Akashic version of the Star Child Tarot. And this, I can't, it doesn't give. There's no way to bridge it. As I'm shuffling like twice now, I can already feel my jaw tighten up. Those of you that have worked with me or heard me talk a lot about tarot, shuffling is a huge part of my process. When I was a kid, I played a lot of card games with my aunts. So I've been riffling and bridging since I was 4. And it's a big part of both my process with a reading, how I bond with a deck of cards, and just my own like spiritual lineage with cards. And this one doesn't even overhand well. It overhands in clumps. I keep thinking about maybe I'll shuffle it, and if it take, or maybe I'll trim it, and if it takes down, you know, ½ inch on the sides and probably close to 1 inch by the time I take the top off the top and bottom, maybe that'll make a difference, but I doubt it. I've even tried to shuffle from the side, and there's no give. There's no give to riffle. And they don't go to, I just can't. And I love the imagery in this deck. Like, I absolutely, it tickles my fancy. It's not workable for me. And I want it to be, and I can't get rid of it. It's been in a purgatory space for, for a long time. I can't. So the cardstock, the worst cardstock that makes me really sad, is the Star Child Tarot. And the best cardstock, which I absolutely love, is the deck that I created, which is the Narrative Alchemy Tarot. So moving now to the most confronting deck and the most comforting deck. I used to chuckle when people would talk about their decks having like personalities, you know, like this deck is bossy or this deck is whatever. This deck, y'all, it's got my number. I just got it last week when I did the intro spread, the get to know you spread with it. It basically called me a child that doesn't take anything seriously and said it knew everything. And then the other side of that is the most comforting deck that I own. The deck that makes me happy and really brings in a really nice sense of comfort for me. So for the confronting deck, we have the Terra Volatile. I am very excited to work with this deck. I'm not gonna lie. When I did my my get to know you spread, the card that came up to represent the deck was the Hierophant, which I typically interpret as like making our own answers, but the energy of this deck was very much, I have things to teach you, sit down and shut up. For me, the card that represented me as far as the deck was concerned, the Three of Cups came up, which again, I traditionally understand as it being in community and enjoying each other's company. And instead, it was very clearly telling me, Chrissy, get your stuff together. This is not a time to lollygag and party and worry about relationships. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And then the card that I drew for the work that we would do together was the Chariot. And the Chariot very clearly to me was getting out of my own way, getting my priorities straight, and no longer carrying what isn't mine. I don't know why I just told you that story, because I tell you that story in my deck review that I hope to have up in about a month or so. But anyway, you can fast forward through it when it happens again. But this deck is it's got my number. Like, it's from the time I opened the box, I'm like, this deck is gonna read me to absolute filth. I've done several readings since then. I keep drawing the Hangman, which is just telling me to be still and keep checking things out. Yeah, this is a very confrontational deck for me. And I kind of love it. I'm kind of excited about it. I don't know that I've gotten this feeling from a deck since the Somnia Tarot, which I'll talk about later. Yeah, this is a confronting deck. And then on the flip side of that is my most comforting deck. And this is the Future Ancestors. And now I'm wondering if this cardstock is the same too. Oh, friends, it's really close. Anywho, Maybe that's why I love this so much. Neither here nor there. Come on, Chrissy, let's focus. I've said that a lot, haven't I? It's Friday. I've had a lot of coffee. Thank you, Sarah Jane Case. Well, that's, you know. So this is my most comforting deck. I originally got this deck to do ancestor work with, and it became very clear that this is my inner child deck. I love it. I hope we get to the 8 of Needles, the 8 of Swords, because the imagery on that about like which direction the swords are really pointing, I think is a very poignant version of this card, of this. I love this. It's cozy. I feel like it tells me what I need to hear in a way that that I can hear. I think about sometimes different decks I talk to myself differently when I hear them or when I use them. This deck, I hear, oh honey, when I draw a card. This deck is straight up Chrissy Ann, like Chrissy Ann to get it together. but this deck is a, come on honey. Have you thought about, have you looked at, what if something else was true? That's the voice of this comforting deck. And again, I don't feel that this is necessarily a hug deck. When I was having some conflict last week, this was a deck that I drew with, and it told me what to do. I mean, it very quickly shifted my perspective and what my role was in that moment, but from a place of, okay, honey, have you thought about this? Not, Chrissy Ann, what the hell are you doing? So that is the difference for me between a comforting deck and a confronting deck. How I know the difference, honestly, is how my inner monologue interprets the message from the cards. And for the future ancestors, my comforting deck, it is Oh Honey. And for the Terra Volatile, it is Chrissy Ann. Now, another aspect of cards having personalities, the Terra Volatile does not like this wrap. And I know that, and I apologize, and I continue to apologize, but my fabric is still, it hasn't shipped from Spoonflower yet. She's just gonna have to be patient. I like to have the decks in hand before I order my fabric, so I know, like I have an idea. So she's not happy in this hamster wrap. And I didn't make this one. I don't remember who this came from. I've had this one for years, probably 5 or 6 years. And I love it, but all the other wraps here I've made. Like, she's seething at me over there. I don't know what I'm gonna do with her. So the next category is every day and every so often. This one took me a while because I really feel like the vast majority of my decks, the ones that I've shown you so far, for the most part, other than the Lillifer and the Star Child, all the rest of them have a everyday use feel. So honestly, my everyday use choice was basically just a deck that I wanted to talk about that didn't really fit in any other category. So my everyday use deck, Chrissy, you're ridiculous. My everyday use deck is the Guided Hand Tarot. And my every so often deck is the Tarot is Color. Now, I really, 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 really wanted the Tarot is Color to be an everyday deck for me. When I received it, I was like, yes, this deck is for me. Everything about it just makes sense to me. It is a deep dive. I see, and I think again, because of part of how I experience, how I participate in, how I facilitate Reiki. This feels like a deeper version of the Linescapes Tarot, where the Linescapes is like a session I would have with somebody I've just met. This is a session that I would have with someone I've worked with for a year, or with myself. And because of that, it became really overwhelming as a daily reader. I tried. My typical draw, there's a video that I did several videos back. Every day I draw a card from my Narrative Alchemy Tarot, which I let that card lead to 2 or 3 questions that I draw additional cards for. So I have my anchor card and then my question cards. And I really thought this was going to work as my more information deck, and it didn't. It's just too much, in a lovely way, but it's just too much. So I'm thinking this may be part of, I may incorporate this into my monthly chakra check-in. I don't know how I'm going to continue to use this yet. I'm going to leave the Ace of Pentacles on top. I don't know how I'm going to continue to use this, but it's not going anywhere. I absolutely love it. It's just too loud, too much. It just has way too much to say to be a frequent reader. So it definitely goes into the every so often category, where my everyday, I love the Guided Hand Tarot. Let's flip this right side up. I completely bought this deck on a whim, 100%. I was in Louisville with my best friend and our husbands. We were walking around. Like, the first time I'd been in and out of shops basically since the pandemic started. And we only went in like 2 or 3, and it felt like such a big deal. And one of the shops we went in had a tarot deck by a local artist. I had never seen or heard of this deck before. I really didn't flip through it. I didn't care. I'm like, oh my gosh, a deck I don't know about. I'm going to buy this deck. And I got it home and I absolutely fell in love with it. This is one of my favorite chariots. Because I think this shows like the middle of the middle of the road, in the middle of the path, in the middle of the process, and those moments of when everything is running smoothly, and then you hit, the little wheel on the tower, and there's like that disheveled moment, and you have to regather yourself. Maybe trolleys just make me nervous. Maybe I went to Gatlinburg way too many times as a kid. I love this card. I fell in love with this deck. And I think it's a very solid everyday reader. I love that the collage isn't super clean. I think that's a big draw, a big excitement for me of the deck. I'm going to find the Ten of Wands real quick, because I think it's toward the back of the deck, because it is my favorite Ten of Wands in existence, and may be my favorite tarot card ever. Look at this Ten of Wands. I love it so much. We have this little old lady who was trying to carry, she's going to carry all of her groceries at once, no matter what, no matter how hard it is. She's making it harder than it has to be. Oh my gosh, I love this card so much. Like, to the point that I'm like, is there any way to get this little old lady as a tattoo? I mean, I'm sorry, there's a gnat flying around if you see my hand doing weird things. I love this deck, and I love her, and she makes me so happy. And maybe that's why I want this deck to be an everyday deck, because I truly want to see her as much as possible. Like, I need to give her a name. I really want to go for her as Halloween, but then I'd have to, carry the card around with me too, and it might get hurt. So yeah, an everyday deck. And like I said, I feel like a lot of my decks are everyday, so this is sort of unfair. I just wanted to show my friend. So for the everyday deck, we have the Guided Hand Tarot, and for an every so often deck, we have Tarot with Color. Oh, the next one's going to probably ruffle some feathers, but you know what? It's what we do. Anyone who takes on these tags that have polarizing opinions, people are going to have opinions, and it is what it is. So the next category is, ooh, don't knock things over, Chrissy. Sorry, I jostled the camera. Is overrated deck and an underrated deck. And this is what is hard about the Wild Unknown. One, the only reason I still have it is because it's mass market, and like, what am I going to do with it? Like, no one's going to buy it. I tell myself that maybe one day I'll be interested in it. It was, I think, the third deck that I bought. My first deck was a Rider-Waite. Didn't bond with it. My second deck was Fountain Tarot, which I loved and still do. I honestly just didn't bring it in because I didn't want to have too much overlap with Marlena. Or I probably would have put it exactly where she put it, but I won't spoil that for you. And then this was my third deck, and I wanted to love it. I wanted to love it. It's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. But both this deck and the Animal Spirit Oracle, they're cold to me. They tell me nothing. It's like that person who has a secret and they like kind of toss it around in front of you and are intentionally evasive. That's how this deck feels to me. And because it feels intentionally evasive to me, I can't bond with it. And that puts it in an overrated category for me. I think the artwork is beautiful. I don't think that the hard cards are too hard at all. There is no resonance in my soul. This deck is a thud in my belly. Even the Tower. So yeah, this deck for me is overrated simply because it falls so flat. Not because I don't understand why people love it. We're just not friends. We're just not friends. But I also can't get rid of it. I mean, maybe I'll take it to Half Price Books. By the way, I have been saying maybe I will take this deck to Half Price Books since before the pandemic, and Half Price Books is probably literally, Chris Traeger there, literally half a mile from my house. And no, it's still sitting in my floor in a box. Well, that's where it is. It's on my desk right now, but you know what I mean. And then probably the most underrated deck in my collection. And I don't understand why. Oh, friends, this is the Tarot of the Drowning World. It's, you know what? It's going to get its own, it's going to have room to spread out here. I just noticed that at some point my camera, it's still recording, but at some point it zoomed out. I don't know what that was about. I'm sorry. Things are messy. You now you're getting a little more mess. My watch just showed me that. Sorry, friends, but we're in it. We're 38 minutes in, so we're going to finish this up here. The Tarot of the Drowning World is stunningly beautiful. And it is so emotionally evocative to me. And part of the reason, honestly, that I paired this with the Wild Unknown Tarot is that it is just as mysterious. It is just as hard, difficult, if not really, really difficult to read with any sort of intuitiveness. It requires, for me, a lot of time with the guidebook a lot of work with what the colors are, what they represent, how I read them. On paper, this deck is as difficult as, I don't know the word I'm looking for, as unclear as the Wild Unknown. But and maybe it's a difference between, I do have a soft spot for photography, right? But there is something about this deck that I cannot get enough of. This is my daily draw with the Narrative Alchemy Tarot 9 times out of 10, unless like I'm showing off another deck for Instagram or something. I get this deck, and this deck gets me. And I don't know that I've seen anybody work with this deck on TarotTube. I've seen a couple of walkthroughs, but it doesn't seem to be, I mean, look at that. Look at that Ace of Pentacles. It's just, it's beautiful. There are a few cards that have animals in it that are a little disturbing to me, but I think that's I will not show that one. But I think that's part of, I think the deck was designed to be emotionally evocative, so it is what it is. This is just such a solid deck in my practice, and I think it's underrated, and I don't know if people have it and don't use it, or use it and don't talk about it, but I see this deck so rarely. And also, the one thing that bugs me a little bit is the backs and the fronts, I don't see the connection. Like, I understand that this is like water and like our nervous system. I get it, but I would have preferred something different. So this deck is also linen, and it shuffles really well from the side. Like, I have no complaints. I can't bridge it, but it riffles so well. And this is an example, friends, of how a deck that shuffles well, that I feel like that ASMR feeling after ASMR, whatever. I get the same little brain spine tingles from a good shuffle. I love it so much. So this is one more, Chrissy. We can do this. So this is the Tarot with the Drowning World as my most underrated deck, and the Wild Unknown Tarot as the most overrated deck in my collection, even though they're so similar. I know. And then finally, light work and shadow work. Now, the way that I think about this, the way that I took this category, for me, the way that I feel light work and shadow work, light work is when I ascend, when I go up into my higher chakras, and shadow work is when I go into my lower chakras. I'm going into my cognitive, my conscious mind, my intuition, my connection with source, when in a deck that helps me with light work. And with shadow work, I'm going into my unconscious, I'm going into my sense of purpose, where those blocks are, my sense of belonging and pleasure, and where those blocks are. So I really think of light work as like moving up, getting more clarity from a place of like shining, going toward the sun, I guess, where my shadow work is digging to get even if it's a similar answer. So my choice for light work, you can probably hear the smile in my voice. I love both of these decks very, very, very much. I'm just going to go ahead and get both of them out because I love them so much. I love them both so much. They are both so cheeky with me. I get such balanced, even like good friend, coffee shop. Um, I'm gonna tell you how it is, and I might get a little bit firm, but I'm not gonna make you feel bad. Both of these decks have that energy for me. So for my light work, and the Fool is on top. They're not in order, and the Fool is on top. That's lovely. Is the Dream Vision Tarot. This was a deck that I used in the first round of Inner Ones Tarot School. As my study deck, the Six of Swords. So this concept of when we don't know where we're going, when we don't know what's through the door, we're still supported by Source. Source is still like supporting under there. Oh my gosh, I love this deck so much. This card sends me to Source. This card sends me, this deck sends me to my intuition. This deck sends me up and out. It is not my aesthetic. My aesthetic is really, simple or collage or photography. That tends to be like what I really love. That may have been. Anyway, this is not my typical aesthetic. And I love this deck. This deck speaks to me. This deck sends me, draws me up and out. And that's how I think of light work. Now the Somniatary, what? The Somnia Tarot. I don't know where Terry came from. This is my shadow work deck. This deck pulls me down and in. I love that this card came up because this card, this Emperor is what gave me a reference point to understand that the structure and the planning that the Emperor brings also brings a lot of responsibility, also brings a lot of pressure. So the Emperor doesn't seek this sense of control for the sake of control. There's this fear of like, if I let go, if I don't control, then everything's going to collapse. And that changed my understanding of this card. That made me fall in love with the Emperor. So yeah, this deck, it's kind of cheeky with me. It definitely holds. The readings that I get from it are very sarcastic. If I'm asking it questions that are dumb, it'll give me circular answers. One of my favorite readings that I did ever, and I talk about this all the time, I've probably talked about it here before, it was one of those days where I had a lot to do. It was one of my magic work days. I had a lot to do. Nothing was particularly important. I was having a hard time prioritizing, and I just pulled out the deck and I'm like, where do I start? And it gave me the Eight of Pentacles. So I start by just doing the work. And I'm like, it's not what I wanted to hear today. I love this deck. It takes me deep, but it also tells me, Chrissy, just do the thing. It makes the depth seem not as scary, which is weird because this deck is visually this pretty intense. Oh my gosh, we're gonna go and leave it on the Tower because this is my favorite. This is my favorite representation of the Tower. Because to me, this shows how much of our own action or lack of action is actually making things worse. Like if the figure would just roll over, then the house would go ahead and crumble and the fire would be out. This to me feels very similar to the Tower in the Terror for Mystical Moments, where the figure is like hugging the tower and trying to prevent it from falling. And what I also love about this representation of the tower is once the house is gone, the figure will still be here, and the figure will still be complete. And the crux of what we are, the crux of our foundation, will continue to be here even when it seems like everything has fallen. So my light work deck is Dream Visions, and my shadow work deck is the Somnia Tarot. So that I can get my little picture at the end, to be honest, and so just so I can, if there was anything that you missed the first time around, we'll just go ahead and walk through my choices again as we close. So my minimalist deck is the Kawaii Tarot. My maximalist deck is the Lillifer. My morning reading is Linescapes. My evening reading is Mystical Moments. Best shuffle is my deck, the Narrative Alchemy Tarot. Worst shuffle is the Star Child Tarot. My confronting deck is Terra Volatile. My comforting deck is Future Ancestors. My once in a while tarot is Tarot of Color. My everyday deck is the Guided Hand Tarot. I forgot. My overrated deck is Wild Unknown. My underrated deck is the Tarot of the Drowning World. My everyday tarot is Dream Visions, and no, light work is Dream Visions. Shadow work is Somnia Tarot. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoy the tag. I cannot wait to see everyone. This one's going to be so much fun. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you soon.